Welcome. My name is Chris, otherwise known as M. Christian, and today I'll be reading, with sincerest apologies to all of you out there who, unlike myself, actually speak Japanese, my story Ichigo Ichii. If you've read my bio, are familiar with my work, or plan on attending my presentation on the future of sex, you might be expecting something rather explicit. Not to disappoint, but this is definitely a G-rated tale. For my sexy stuff, especially of the speculative fiction variety, check out my recent book, Hard Drive, The Best SF Erotica of M. Christian, or peruse my site at www.mchristian.com. For those wishing to lavish copious amounts of praise on me, feel free to email me at mchristianzobop@gmail.com or look me up on Twitter where I'm mchristianzobop. Finally, in case she makes an appearance, my cat is named Sweet Pea, and she most definitely lives up to her name. Ichigo Ichii by M. Christian. That's the word. Well, words of the day, Bodmas said, stirring their milky coffee with a slow, steady hand as if they savored the ritual more than the eventual drinking. Always liked Japanese. I think I know this one. One time, one place? No, that's not it. Lucy said, taking an eager sip from her own cup. Making a way too hot face, she returned it to the table, fast enough to threaten a slosh of black liquid over the mug's thick ceramic sides. One time, one place, Roger intoned with leaded conviction. It means something special or rare that happened once, just once. Where Lucy's was full, he gestured to the waitress, who began to head over to their booth with a brightly stainless steel carafe to serve him more. Bodmas, Lucy, and Roger. They didn't have a name for their little get-togethers. The 2 a.m. club was suggested by Bodmas, until Lucy and Roger brought up they didn't always meet at that time, and the 2 a.m. to sometimes as late as 3:30 a.m. club didn't have the right ring to it. The Denny's crew was flown by Lucy, but was shot down by Bodmas and Roger, who protested the inclusion of the establishment without, that is, corporate sponsorship or suitable remuneration for the advertising. The Bureau of Thought was subsequently proposed by Roger, though after some debate, Bodmas and Lucy vetoed it as it honestly did fall on the intolerably pretentious side of things. So Bodmas, Lucy, and Roger had no name for what they did, and Nancy was far too new to offer her own suggestion. Say they were just the group, which got together once a week from 2 a.m. to around 3:30 a.m. at their local Denny's. There wasn't any real structure to what they talked about or how they did it. Each one, Bodmas, Lucy, and Roger, and whoever else, and whenever she felt like she was ready to join in Nancy, would suggest a topic, who also paid the bill when the sun finally rose. After dozens of meetings, a sort of order began to appear. Bodmas would present an unusual word, describing an even more unusual concept. Lucy offered intriguing moral dilemma. Roger asked for suggestions on how to solve a fill-in-the-blank social issue. And Nancy, as this was her second time attending, remained locked behind shy uncertainty. So, something that happened to you, something unusual, Bodmas said, finally taking a cautious sip of their coffee. Everyone game? Lucy risked another taste of her own, finding it cool enough to drink. After doing so, she said, "Sure, I think I've got one. What about you, Raj?" Roger nodded, dumping in a massive white wave of cream into his. "I have one. More than one. Just have to pick." He flashed a tightly wry smile before taking an alarmingly loud slurp. "What about you, Nancy?" Bodmas said with a bright grin towards her. "You up to sharing this time?" Nancy looked down at her uncreamed, untasted cup. She didn't like coffee. Glacially, she raised her head. "I think so." "No worries, sweetie," said Lucy. "If you want, you can go last." Nancy nodded. "Thanks," she said, voice barely a whisper. "Guess I'll get the ball rolling." Tenting their fingertips and lowering their head to hood their eyes, Bodmas boldly strolled onto the conversational stage. "If you say dark and stormy night, I'm out of here," Lucy laughed. "Fine, fine. What's wrong with the world? No sense of the dramatic." Bodmas flopped back into the bench seat with an audible squeak of vinyl. "This was, I don't know, 10 or so years ago. I was driving with my brother. Did I mention it was in San Jose?" Lucy and Roger shook their heads. Okay, driving with my brother in San Jose. He was driving, I mean, and I was in the passenger seat. Anyway, I looked in the rearview mirror, watching the street recede behind us. Just one of those stupid things you do when you're bored. Anyway, I was looking at all the signs and stuff and how they were versed, trying to figure out what they said. They paused for a second to massage their long, elegant face. I was trying to read them, and then I could. I don't mean I could figure them out, decipher what they were saying, but that they weren't reversed anymore. I thought maybe it was just one sign, like an advertisement that was printed backwards so people looking in their mirrors could read them, like how ambulance is written that way on their hoods, so when you see one in your rear view mirror, you could read it clearly. No, this was everything on the street. Ads, street signs, everything. I remember blinking a couple of times at least, but I still could read them. Then it simply stopped, and everything in the rear view was reversed again. Must have lasted for 5 minutes, maybe a little less. Guess it was my brain. For some reason, it just flipped. But I kept thinking about it, that maybe it was, I don't know, something else. Lucy whistled, causing the waitress to look over at them. Shaking her head to indicate everywhere in the booth was fine, she put a hand on Bodmash's shoulder. That's wow. That's wow. Probably a trick of perception, Roger proclaimed, but it still must have been a very odd experience. The weirdest thing is I remember wanting to tell my brother about it, that it was weird and strange, but I didn't. I guess I wanted to keep it for myself. Never told anyone else about it. But now I have, I guess. Bodmas said with a loose smile, patting Lucy's hand in return. Kind of feels less now. The booth was quiet for a stretched minute. Then Lucy spoke up. My turn, I suppose. She tried her coffee but made a face that the brew was now on the opposite side of the temperature spectrum. Okay, here goes. Deep breath. She laughed to herself, high and almost chirpy. Not as good as yours, I think, she directed to Bodmas. But it was creepy all the same. This was, 15 years ago? I was working at Sears. Boy, that really dates me, doesn't it? Anyway, I was working the late night crew, putting up signage, prepping displays, fixing stock, really late too. Started when the store closed at 9 p.m. and knocking off at 5:30 a.m., a few hours before the place opened. It was a weird place to be, just maybe me and two other people in the huge store. Most of the lights were off too. We had to use flashlights to see where we were going. Even though it was cold and bitter, she took a long drink of coffee. One night I was doing something, I can't remember what, and I hear what sounds like a child's voice. So I thought, oh crap, there's a kid in here, and right away considered calling the cops. But first I tried calling to them, my voice all cracked and broken, but no one answered. I looked around the floor, almost yelling this time, and then it came again, and I could hear what it was saying. It kept going, turn me off, over and over again. It took me at least half an hour to find it. It was one of those educational toys, and it was saying this so its batteries wouldn't run out. But it freaked me out a lot. And then I kept thinking about it, as the last thing left when the world was gone, this tiny voice pleading for someone to put it out of its misery. Shit, Lucy, said Bodmas, their hand going to her shoulder this time. That's freaky. You okay? She nodded, placing hers on top of theirs. Just weird, you know? Roger wore what, for him, must have been a kind of smile, but you realize it was just a toy. Another rise, a rather shallow, slow rise of her head. But you know, never told anyone about it. Until now. Feels, weird to say it aloud. It was something I'd think about, the thing begging to be turned off. Not too sure how I feel about it now. The quiet, elongated minute, or maybe as many as 5, returned. Then Roger cleared his throat. It was in 2015. I was driving for a Lyft. Not a great job, but a way to generate income when school's out for the summer. I was in Oakland, down near the Cypress structure, having dropped off a fare and waiting for a new one. It's like that sometimes, as long as half an hour between, sitting and waiting for the next one. I was reading, I don't know what. The area down there is kind of rough, not dangerous, broken. Empty houses, vacant lots, the roads full of potholes. It was just getting dark. The sun was beginning to go down. And on one side was a row of old houses. On the other was this big kind of hill, but made of chunks of concrete and dirt. I thought it might have been a leftover from the Loma Prieta earthquake, but that was years ago. He stopped his steady cadence of words to peer down into his half-empty cup. Then I saw this man. I couldn't make out much about him and was silhouetted against the setting sun. I remember he was big, not obese, just big. He went up that hill, the one I mentioned, not casually. It was like he was marching up there, with a purpose, I mean. He got to the top quite fast, and then, well, he produced a sword. By its curve, I'm pretty sure it was a katana, a Japanese sword. Then he started to use it, not swiping it around, but like he knew what he was doing. He was graceful, powerful. His movements were really quite fluid. After what must have been 10 minutes, he put the sword away and walked back down the hill. I tried to see where he went, but it had gotten dark. I couldn't see, and I guess I didn't want to see. It was like I'd seen something private, that he was up on that big hill. I think about it a lot. Who was he? Why was he practicing like that? Did he do it every night? I could have found out, gone back to that same spot again, but I just didn't. I just thought about it and never told anyone about it until now. That's freaky, Bodman said. I mean, well, they laughed at saying the same word so often. Wow. You think he was like a modern samurai, or that it was some kind of special ritual he was doing? Lucy asked. I don't know, Roger murmured. I really don't. Feels, he fluttered his hands, odd to talk about it. Now it feels silly. More minutes, more silence. Then Lucy smiled at Nancy. So, you think you want to share something, sweetie? You don't have to if you don't want to. Nancy looked back down, back up. Her eyes did a little dance, like they were flickering back and forth along a parade of thoughts, trying to find one that would best fit the moment. Only if you feel comfortable, said Bodmas. I know this might be a bit challenging, still getting used to all this, and us. Still, I'm glad you're here. Thank you, she answered softly. They'd introduced her to the existence of the group, and then subsequently invited her to join. Then, and at that moment, Bodmas was a brightly smiling anchor. Still, her nervous storm threatened to toss Nancy under the rocks. But a deep breath stilled things, and before she knew what she was doing, she said, I'd like to, really. That's good. I know it'll be interesting, Roger said, showing his own tight but still sincere grin. Okay, Nancy said, taking yet another long, slow breath. As she did, she absently picked up a sugar packet and pushed it back and forth on the laminated tabletop. I think I can. I mean, it's not that unusual, I guess. To me it was. Unusual, I mean. From back and forth, the sugar packet went to gently, steadily splaining. Not like what you all shared, but it was something that I thought of as, well, like I said, unusual. Nancy paused, looking up and through her eyebrows at the others. Take your time, said Bodmas. No rush. That's right, sweetie, said Lucy. Whatever you want to share, I'm sure it'll be wonderful. No one is going to pass judgment on you, said Roger. We're all friends here. The packet spun in the other direction. After a moment, a second joined the first, with Nancy focusing on carefully aligning them into a neat and much larger rectangle. Okay, she said, beginning to take a breath, but realizing what she was doing, smiled instead. It's like this. I mean, okay, this was about 15 years ago. I was visiting my brother in Long Beach. Not a long stay, just a few weeks. He graduated from California State down there. Geology, that's what he got his degree in. Anyway, I was staying with him, but he had a lot of things to finish up, so I spent a lot of time exploring the area, checking out bookstores mostly. There's this great one down there called Acres of Books that is exactly that. This huge space, like a bunch of warehouses, ceiling to rafter with books. So I was down there one day checking out the fiction section. I'd really gotten into Earl Stanley Gardner, so I was looking to see if they had any more of his Perry Mason books. I didn't find any, at least the ones I hadn't read, and then I saw this other book. The title was interesting, but I can't remember what it was. Sorry. But I flipped it open and saw the dedication. It said, the dedication said, "To you, Nancy, for picking up this book." And it was I was shaking. I didn't get the book. I should have. But seeing that I thought that maybe it was really for me. I know how it couldn't be, but I kept thinking that. And I think of what that book might be about. I know that wasn't great, but that's my story, I guess. "No, no," said Bodmas. "That's good, really. Thank you for sharing it." "And then some," said Lucy. "That must have been an interesting experience." "Definitely," said Roger. "Interesting is right." "Hope that telling your story hasn't made the experience any less special," added Bodmas, their eyes flickering away from the booth and out across the restaurant. "Diminished it, I guess that's what I mean." "Yes," Lucy's voice was soft, removed. "That's what I was thinking as well, that talking about it, the book, changed how you felt about it, and other things." "I have similar feelings." Roger looked down at his hands, splayed out on the tabletop. "That it didn't lessen the experience." Nancy spun the sugar packets again, changing their alignment. "No," she said, clearly, and in the early morning stillness of the mostly empty Denny's, said loudly, "Not really." After more coffee and a light breakfast that most of them barely touched, the nameless get-together moved to the door and from there to their cars. Hands were waved until next time's exchanged, and as the sun poked its dull red face over the horizon, they went their separate ways. As before, Bodmas offered to give her a ride home, but again Nancy politely shook her head, saying she was going to stay to enjoy the sunrise. Nervously, Bodmas said, "That's okay. Thanks so much for coming." After absently jangling their keys, they added, "I know it was tough to share. I know we all appreciated it." "Thanks," Nancy said with a soft blush. It did feel odd to share that, the first and only time. Bodmas nodded. I don't know how I feel about it. Like maybe I shouldn't have." After a deep breath, they quickly added, "Well, it's done and done. For better or anyway. Do you think you'll come to the next one as well?" "Sure," Nancy chirped. "I'm looking forward to it." As Nancy waved to Bodmas's departing car, the sun, now inescapably risen into an early morning, painted the restaurant in deep, rosy light and elastically stretched shadows. Unexpectedly, a copy of the previous night arrived with a massive black truck, its slow turn into the parking lot slicing off the dawn. But unlike the real one, it only lasted a few minutes until the driver managed to find a place to park, chugging diesel to crisp silence when the engine switched off. Nancy turned back towards the restaurant, carefully placing herself so she could see inside. She felt a little guilty about her story. Some of it was true, like she'd visited her brother in Long Beach, spent many an afternoon in that vast and dusty store, but all she'd ever found was a few good books, and no special haunting dedication. She watched 4 people go in, mixing at first with the other early morning customers, but then getting led by a waitress to the same booth Bodmas, Lucy, and Roger and herself had sat in. A little guilty, she thought. But it had been about one time, one place, right? Things that happened once. So she technically hadn't broken the rules. The glass was thick, but not so much she couldn't make out what one of them was saying while they were meticulously stirred their coffee. A little shudder, goosebumps tickling Lucy's back and scalp. This was her and them, and no one else. Ever. Not quite Bodmas, Lucy, and Roger and herself. Changes here and there. Clothing, differing heights, ages, and postures. Close enough to be similar, not similar enough to be completely identical. One time, one place. No guilt, no shame. After all, she told herself, this wasn't a single solitary time, but the second she'd seen them sit down together. And, as before, she heard their voices, muffled but clear enough through the glass, with that one of them saying, "That's the word." Well, the words of the day. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed my story and looking forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.